Hello. So today I thought I'd try a little bit of a different video. Actually, not really a video, just an audio recording. In an effort to try and make my videos a little bit more free flowing and to kind of practice speaking as we go along. So I'll just have a go and see how it works. But today I wanted to talk about philosophy in East Asia. Now, if you've know anything about me or know about my channel, I'm not really a philosopher by training. I'm a historian. So this is really something that is more of an interest than I would say an academic specialism, but I just have a go anyway. So in researching this video about philosophy in East Asia, I did, browse through YouTube and look at Wikipedia and read some books about it. And there's quite a lot of information that talks about Chinese philosophy, Eastern philosophy, Asian philosophy. And they normally talk about Confucius, Mencius, Lao Tzu, Taoism, all of this kind of stuff. But one of the things I noticed is that none of these videos or articles really address the question of what philosophy is in an East Asian context. Because obviously, philosophy as a word derives from Greece. It's from European Greek origins. Philo is love, Sophia is knowledge, and so lover of knowledge. And it's rooted in actors like Plato and Aristotle and Pythagoras. And if you trace it back a little bit, it's quite an interesting story about how it first arrived in East Asia, the concept of philosophy. And it first entered East Asia through Japan. There was a scholar called Nishiyamane who studied in Europe for quite a long time, became extremely interested in philosophy. When he returned to Japan, he coined the term tetsugaku. So tetsu is literally wisdom or knowledge, and gaku is study. And he coined this word or rented this word in an attempt to capture the essence of what philosophy was in the West, the study of knowledge. And then it was a little bit later. It was in 1919, I think, that it entered China and became popular. And eventually, Beijing University, which is probably the biggest and most famous university in China, founded the Department of Philosophy, using the same characters that Nishiyamane had coined back in the 19th century. So this is kind of the I guess the baseline of what philosophy is in East Asia. And there's almost two schools of thought about the idea of philosophy in East Asia. Some people are highly critical of the idea of trying to render Chinese or East Asian thought in the garb of philosophy and trying to understand it in that way. And one of the major criticisms of doing this is the fact that it's much more difficult in East Asia to distinguish philosophy from religion. For example, if you think about things like Confucius and Confucianism and Taoism, these are almost blending the line from a Western perspective. They're almost blending the line between religion and philosophy. It's very difficult to distinguish what is faith and logic and belief and reason, whereas in the kind of parochial Greek origins, people like Aristotle and Plato, they were very early on. They very quickly distinguished what is the difference between faith and belief and these kind of different categories. And so kind of the major branches of Western philosophy, things like metaphysics and epistemology, ethics, logic, they don't necessarily align with some of the major paradigms in Chinese thought. We have things like emerged or not yet emerged, yi fa, wei fa, essence and workings, ben ti yu, gong fu, and all these different kinds of ideas that are a little bit more. It's a little bit difficult to kind of divide them along lines of things like metaphysics and epistemology, because it's essentially just a different way of thinking about the world. And kind of another major criticism is that by trying to interpret them through the guise of philosophy or Western philosophy, you risk detaching them from the context in which they were first imagined. And so the question of whether China had a philosophy is superseded by almost a desire to prove that China had philosophy. And so the means to the end are a little bit disingenuous. But then there's another side of the coin where people are more receptive to the idea that East Asia could have a philosophy, or East Asia does have a philosophy. Some stress the kind of strong conceptual links between Western philosophy and East Asian thought. For example, one of the most famous semantic ambiguity, semantically ambiguous ideas in Chinese thought is a white horse is not a horse, by Ma Fei Ma. And this is kind of it's a strand of analytic philosophy. I mean, it's the kind of difference between use and mention. So obviously, a white horse is a horse, but then is a white horse, can it still be considered a horse, or is it now something different? Kind of the difference between, I guess, a concrete object and then the idea of an object. And this really underpins a lot of analytical philosophy in the West, which has led people to think that there's almost two definitions of philosophy. One is a very narrow, parochial definition of philosophy, which is rooted in Greek and Roman and European origins. But then there's more broad definitions of philosophy that can incorporate Chinese thought and any other thought from around the world in one collective idea where everyone's working along the same framework and everyone's dealing with similar ideas. And so it's kind of many manifestations of one principle, I guess you could say. And so I just thought I would kind of outline this argument. I don't think either side is doubting the importance or the validity of Chinese thought. I think that's something really important to point out. Even the people who decry the idea of considering East Asian thought in a philosophical framework, I don't think they're decrying the importance or the validity of Chinese thought, but instead they're trying to think more critically about how it can best be studied as part of a collective system. But obviously, both categories are extremely broad. I mean, there's not just one Western philosophy. You know, if you look at Kantian philosophy and you look at Aristotelian philosophy, they're very, very different. And it's the same in East Asia. I mean, Confucius and Taoism both have extremely different ideas about some very core elements of humans and society and the world around us. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of all I've got to say. So I think I'll leave it there.